Welcome to Get Your House in Order, where the Medici brothers, investors and entrepreneurs Chris Auditore and Dr. Philip Zimmermann discuss timeless principles of success, significance and legacy. A podcast for business owners who want to design a beautiful life and a beautiful business. Sponsored by the one and only exclusive Medici community.
Welcome back to Get Your House in Order. That's what we started talking about. Actually, Chris gave us a little introduction last time on the book Get Your House in Order that you wrote. And for anybody who wasn't listening, it's based on Cosimo de Medici. Why is Cosimo de Medici so important? Who was he? Just in 2 or 3 sentences before we jump into what we want to talk about today.
So Cosimo de Medici is a Renaissance person in the true sense of the meaning. He cultivated an incredible business, but beyond that, he built out his influence in society, went into politics, went into art, went into architecture, and even influenced religion back then. And so there's a lot of things that we can learn from him. I discovered him by accident almost on a vacation down to Florence, Italy, a few years ago with my family. And later on, a friend of mine encouraged me. He said, "Chris, you've learned so much about the Medici family, about art history, because I started studying that. That he encouraged me to write a book, and now we have a book."
Yeah. So this podcast is not just about history. So that's very important. We really want to kind of talk about some of these lessons and just kind of talk also about how, they influenced us, how we trying to implement them, how we are failing to implement them. But I remember actually where I said when you called me and said, "Philip, I need to go to Florence for another trip. Can you join me?" And we flew to Florence, and you booked some private guides to kind of do some more research. And it was fascinating walking these streets of Florence through the eyes of the Medici family and actually learning almost like in the footsteps of Cosimo de Medici. That's how I felt like we were walking and then experiencing these places. And in this book, you are talking about 4 different houses that we actually visited when or some of them that we visited when we were there together. So today in this episode, I want to talk about the first house, the villa. It's a really fascinating house, and you kind of came up with 3 house rules. So under each house, you have 3 house rules and rooms, basically that were important for Cosimo. Give us a little introduction on the villa, the background of the villa. Why was the villa important for Cosimo? Before we jump into some of the kind of the house rules.
So the Villa di Carreggi was Cosimo de Medici's countryside home. So back then, Florence was this bustling city. Some have actually compared it to the Silicon Valley. The last 20 years, if you wanted to be somewhere, you wanted to be in the Silicon Valley in order to shape the world with your business and your commerce. Back then, this was Florence, Italy. So Florence was this incredible bustling city. There were people from the east coming there, from the west. It was a merchant city. There was a lot of import-export. And then obviously banking was revolutionized in that city. So Cosimo lived with his family in the city of Florence, but on a regular basis he left this busy city to go to his countryside home, which is Villa di Carreggi. Nowadays it's actually part of the city because Florence grew over some time, but he had a place where he as a business guy would kind of draw back from the busyness of life, from the business of business, in order to work on himself. And I literally found a quote where Cosimo writes that I'm going to the Villa di Carreggi in order not to work on my fields, and he owned a lot of property and a lot of land, but to work on myself. So I thought, wow, this is a house for personal development, a place that a business guy needs in order to work on himself.
Yeah, which kind of the principle behind it is something we've shared many times. This idea of personal development, that if we don't grow, if we don't become better, if we don't really kind of tap into our potential, then we are leaving behind a lot. And so I love the three house rules. Basically, you worked out of the villa. But before we jump there, I mean, we are working with a lot of very successful entrepreneurs and business owners on all kinds of different scales. Some people who are starting off, some who have been kind of doing a lot of things in the world. Where do you see that this idea of really having a place to retreat, having a place where you can actually concentrate on your personal development, how is that making a difference when it comes to some business owners that are really making a difference?
Well, oftentimes what happens is we're so busy now in our day-to-day stuff that we don't have time to really think and process. And after lots of conversations, I have a whole bunch of friends who've told me that the best ideas that they've ever had to kind of improve their own lives or their businesses have come while they were not actively in the business, but somewhere outside. It can be on a vacation, it can be up in the mountains, it can be on your boat in the water, somewhere else. There's something, probably biology-wise that happens with our body that some chemicals just start flowing differently, also in our brains, that help us shape our lives differently when we're outside our normal environment. And so in a sense, I've taken a lot of inspiration and even developed some practices which we can talk about. But actually, Philip, I just want to say that you've always been an example for me when it comes to personal development. Ever since you left school, I remember back in high school, you were not the biggest reader. You were not the guy who was building a library. But the minute you left high school, you started reading like I know no one else in this world. You've always been absorbing. And because of that, I would say that also our relationship as brothers have really developed over years. I've really always enjoyed the conversations with you because I never felt it was boring. I always felt like you have something new you bring to the table. When we meet for coffee, when we had family dinners, when we discuss things, I always felt like there's some stuff you are processing and you're learning and you're sharing that with me. And so, I feel like I've oftentimes just, taken so much out of that. And in a sense, this is part of why we're having these discussions with other business owners. Some are good at that. They've already processed a lot of things, but some really need to do that a whole lot more.
Well, my backstory is that I remember one Christmas where we had a lot of nice gifts. And then normally at the end, the last gift was always something special. And I remember then the last gift that my dad kind of said, "Oh, I forgot, I have one more gift," and I was all excited. And then he brings out this gift, and it was a book. And I started actually crying. So I was very little. But the backstory is that I'm dyslexic. So reading and writing and learning, it was a very difficult journey for me. I spent most of my childhood in therapy, learning that that even if you are not as successful in the traditional sense of the schooling system, you are still worth something. You still can offer something. I had to learn to kind of go different avenues of how I process things. So I never wanted to read. I did not read until I stumbled on this idea that you actually can read something that you enjoy, that you can learn something, that there are things in life that you can study and learn, that when you really process them, they make you a different person. It's almost like traveling or learning a new language. That's what we do when we learn something new. And I found out that the times I'm the happiest is when I'm learning something new, when I'm observed, and I can also kind of go then into a focus mode where I'm reading, I'm learning, I'm studying, because I really want to get this under my belt. And that's really, I think you are right. A lot of people ask us, because we have been doing business and family business over the last 15 years together and doing projects all over the world. What is the key to our relationship is, I always say, number one is that somehow our parents made it possible that we don't envy each other. and that is unique when it comes to brothers who are just 2 years apart. I never envied you in any way, even though you are so charismatic, you are so gifted, you are so in so many ways. You are such an amazing person where so many people look up to you and envy you. I never in a second envied you, and I also know that you never envied me and applauded me. When I'm successful, you are the happiest guy, and so that's number one. I don't know how our parents made this, but this is number two is exactly what you just said, is that we never left each other behind, in a sense that we really are getting up to grow, to learn. We believe that we can be better tomorrow than we are today, and that tomorrow is brighter than today because we can grow, we can learn. The only currency we have, the only real security we have that tomorrow will be better is if we grow and become better today in order for tomorrow to actually be better. And so the two of us really kind of then sharing and growing together, we kind of is one of the bedrocks of our relationship.
Well, and I would actually say that this is one of the brutal tests that I have with people that I want to be in relationship over a long time, is whether they are actually learning and growing and developing themselves. I know a whole bunch of people who are not doing that, and quite honestly, I don't want to be associated with them. There are some people, whenever you meet them, they tell you the same freaking old stories that they shared with you the last time, and that there's no development. I'm fine. We can have a conversation, but you don't inspire me if you just stay at your level. And so the sad thing is, because of our formal education, is kind of you go through high school, you do your Abitur, you do your IB or whatever that is, then you go to get your bachelor's degree and then perhaps a master's degree, and if you're really smart, then you go like you do your doctorate. You've got a doctorate in organization strategic leadership, and then basically you're done. And a lot of people, also a lot of business guys, they just stop growing the minute they leave university. And then basically they just keep, pursuing their one career in that field, whatever they studied. And I think that's boring. I think that's not interesting. As I say, one of my tests is of people that I really want to be closer, have closer with me, and friends that I develop over years, is, are you still developing yourself? Do you have a new story to share? Do you have something that you're adding to our conversation? If I meet you over dinner, are you telling me something fresh, something that excites you, something that inspires you? And I don't care actually what field that is. Yeah. This can be art, this can be architecture, this can be philanthropy, this can be biology, this can be chemistry. I don't care. I just want to learn something new. So in a sense, we have this great hunger, and this is actually what I saw with Cosimo. As we talk about some of the rooms, he actually gathered some very smart people at his Villa di Carreggi. So there's the room, the salon conversations that he hosted. He founded the Platonic Academy at his home, and he invited the smartest people of his town and of his time to come and have conversations. And so in a sense, I'm encouraging business guys, you need to host smart conversations. You need to get around people that are smarter than you in different fields, and we need to get in the same room and share with each other. And if we do that, that is inspiring. That makes us grow. That makes us better as a person, as a business people.
Well, we had this conversation just a few weeks ago, because we have the Medici community. We have some fascinating people in the community, and we were wondering, okay, who is in this community? How can we kind of put them? And we found out that there are some who are really hungry to learn, to be coached, to really want to do more. And we thought that in the beginning, these are just the people maybe who are starting off, who are still kind of in the game, really wanting to improve their business, want to improve kind of their financial situation. But we quickly found out, no. It's not that. That's not the difference. The difference is not that your
bank account doesn't tell you that truth.
How hungry you are. So we found out that sometimes people with 3 employees, they are happy and everything is good, and they don't want to grow and everything is good. And then we have some people who have 1,000 employees, but they're still hungry. They still want to learn. They still want to grow. And all of a sudden, these people have more in common because there is a brighter future when you are growing and when you're learning and when you're developing.
And that's why the Medici community, at the end of the day, is a learning community.
Yes.
So this is how we describe ourselves. Yes, it's business people, it's entrepreneurs, business owners, business families, investors that we come together and we share our paths together. But really, it's a learning community. So and that's where people can contribute in a meaningful way if they are learning and growing. Yeah. And if they're not, this is really not the place for them. And I'm very honest. I've been inviting people as part of my travel. As I look at some of our investments, as we and as I do some of the speaking that is part of my life where I'm contributing. I'm looking for people who want to learn and grow and develop themselves further.
Yeah. So going back to the house rules. So there are 3 house rules under the villa, and you mentioned the one debate ideas, and this idea that out of sharing knowledge, out of really this desire to learn, some beautiful conversations can happen. And I think in a time like this, I remember, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, I did a trip, a speaking tour in the US. I did 20 states in 6 weeks.
Oh wow, that's a lot.
Spoke over 100 times to different audiences, groups. And I realized very soon that right now what's happening in the States, but it's also happening around the world, is, so I would quote somebody, and I immediately I saw that the moment I quoted somebody, I actually lost half of the room. Because all of a sudden they thought that I agreed with everything they ever written, tweeted, or said lately. And because all of a sudden there are this divide of you're either in this camp or you're in that camp. And this is not good. This is not good because we then don't hear and learn from the other point. Because I don't agree with everything you said, you don't agree with everything I say, but we can, in the conversation, learn, and rather than seeing how you are wrong, I would be stupid to not say, okay, now what can I learn from you, even if I, in some fundamental ways, I don't agree with you. And that's where this idea of debating ideas and the Platonic academy that Cosimo kind of revived is so powerful.
Well, there's this quote at the beginning of the chapter by Eleanor Roosevelt that I've put there, which says, "Small minds discuss people, average minds discuss events, and great minds discuss ideas." And I think you just were sharing about that. People who have small minds, they just discuss other people. What did they say lately? What kind of did they put out? Do I like the way they dress? Whatever. This is stupidity in my perspective. Average minds discuss events. Yes, what's the latest news in the world? We can have some conversations around that. But great minds really discuss ideas. And this is kind of the realm that I want to see also as part of doing this podcast here. We want to discuss some great ideas that have helped us and that are helping us in order to create a beautiful life and create beautiful businesses. But this needs this level of debate. And so in a sense, it's also not my way or the highway. It's not. It's just it's really a work in progress. And so Cosimo, as a business guy, created a realm at his home at the Villa di Carreggi, where he invited great minds to speak ideas. They would quote philosophical ideas. After the Middle Ages, and this is part of the history lesson here, for 500 years, for 1,000 years, they did not read much of the ancient Greek and Roman literature. Only in the monasteries and in the convents, kind of the church people, they were reading. But the rest of society, specifically business people, did not do that. Mm-hmm. There was no reading because there were no books. And so he, as a business guy, said, I want to create a realm where we're having ideas. And he restarted the Platonic Academy. Now, Plato, we all know Plato is this incredible mind out of the ancient world who facilitated these conversations amongst philosophers. Now, Cosimo restarted that, and it came to me as a big surprise. Why does a business guy create philosophical evenings in the evening? Well, I think because he wanted to elevate his thinking. He wanted to think different thoughts. And he actually thought that there were some lessons that he could learn for his business that came out of philosophy. I love that because it shows he has an inquisitive, curious mind. And so what I'm looking for is inquisitive people and inquisitive minds.
Well, in my last 4 offices, I had actually pictures of people that I admire, kind of from history.
I know that. I always love that
Hall of Fame. And when I would have a problem, I would look at these people and ask, okay, how would this person deal with this? And one of them is Mahatma Gandhi. Who is a big fan. I'm a big fan. He's a big fan of mine. I wish, but I'm a big fan of his. I've studied his work, and I remember reading a story where he was asked by a news reporter about a question, and he would give the answer to that question. And the news reporter looked at him and said, "Mr. Gandhi, last week you were asked the same question by another reporter, but you gave a completely different answer. What happened?" And Gandhi just looked at him and said, "Well, I grew. I grew. I learned." And now, if Mahatma Gandhi, would be so humble to say, "I'm learning, I'm growing, I'm developing out of that." So we should be engaged in that too. Number 2, you know that because you also enjoy reading theology. So I love, as one of my hobbies is reading theology. And one of my favorite theologians once said that 80% of my theology is great, 20% is really bad. I just don't know which 20%.
I love that quote.
And I think it's when it comes to our values, our principles, what we are passionate. So it's not about not caring, everything is relevant. And no, if you know Chris and if you know me, we are passionate about principles. We are passionate about kind of discussing what we are. But at the same time, we hold it lightly because we know maybe I'm not as humble as this theologian. I would say 10% of my values and principles are not great. I just don't know which 10%. So that at least should give me a humility in order to discuss and learn from others as well.
Yeah, so when we come together, also as part of the Medici community, it's really kind of, we're sitting around tables. So even when we do the conference in Mallorca, it's not about, kind of just someone up front kind of, teaching and dropping their wisdom, and then we all just take notes. That's part of it. But it's really kind of hosting the conversation of different minds, different people, different cultures to learn and study together and learn something. And that's actually one of the most beautiful things that I see developing here at the moment, is that we've got people with different backgrounds, different industries that they're from. And so a lot of learning actually happens if you put people in the room that normally don't talk to each other. Like, everyone knows that I have a big history in real estate investing and have done it for the last 25 years. And oftentimes in real estate, I love the whole topic. I've lectured on it. I've explained to people on how to do that. I've spoken around the world on, how to do multifamily investing. But it's always the same kind of people and it's the same kind of questions. Mm-hmm. And, I enjoy it. But also, it can get quite boring if you're always with the same kind of people. And so one of the things that I really enjoy as part of the Medici community here at the moment is that we have people from different industries, different sectors, and that's where some cross-learning is actually happening. And I think the groundstroke really is what Cosimo did, is he invited people with different perspectives, different ideas to come to his place and have that conversation.
Well, it's funny because a lot of people, when I talk to them about, maybe potentially joining, so basically it's by invitation only, but if we go through a process and we feel like this is a good fit for our community, we, many have asked me the question, so are there people similar like me, my industry, my kind of setup, because that's what they're looking for in a community, because they feel like, oh, then I can really learn, and then I can really we can learn together. And I normally tell them, hey, it's all kinds of different backgrounds, all kinds of different industries, all kinds of different countries.
I think we have 25 different countries already represented at the moment, as part of the community.
Yes, and so it's very diverse. And then now, just last week, I was working here on a video where we ask like 25 members what they enjoyed the most about the Medici community? And the number one answer is the diversity of the community, because it's not in us, because we look for who we are. We want to be associated with our tribe. We want to be close to who we are. And so we are a little bit skeptical of people who have other cultures, other industries. But when we open ourselves up to that, wow, some unbelievable cross-learning can take place. Okay, before we wrap up this episode, one thing I just want that we mention here, and by the way, everybody can get the book at medicibook.com for free, actually. But one of the first house rule you start with, just want to end with this, is water your garden. Just speak to us for a second.
So fascinating story that I discovered about Cosimo de Medici. He employed a lot of people. He had a lot of land. He in a sense, was also in real estate as a banker. But at the Villa di Carreggi, I read in a whole bunch of letters and people actually commenting on his life. Cosimo took the greatest pride to actually, in the mornings, get up early and walk through his garden and cultivate his garden himself. So he would water the plants, but he would also actually put seeds and plants into the soil, and he would import plants from all over Europe, even Africa and the Middle East, and put this in the garden. So in a sense, he was a gardener. And the principle that I kind of took away from that, we all have these incredible busy lives. We've got employees, we've got investments, we've got other things, new products, stuff we're developing as business owners and entrepreneurs. We need a place where we really take care, in a sense, of our soul and our mind and our body. And funny enough, oftentimes nature, getting out of our normal environment, getting out of the office and finding a place by the water, by the sea, in the mountains, or in a garden, is so life-giving. And so, that's why I start the whole book off with, water your garden. And I tell business guys now all the time, how are you taking care of yourself? How are you taking care of who you are as a human being? And I actually share a burnout situation that I had in my 20s. You remember, Philip, that I really hit a wall and kind of had to jump on a plane, leave the country in order to kind of put myself, piece myself back together. So I've for many years have always kind of asked the question for myself, for my own routine, what can I do so that I'm doing well myself? I can't be creating great businesses and have a lot of great output if I don't have great input. And sometimes this great input doesn't happen in my normal work environment. I need some space. I need a physical location that I go to. And so one of the questions I ask at the end of this chapter is, what is your physical location that you go to in order to work on yourself? Yeah. Now, today, lots of people in this kind of work-life balance kind of thing, lots of us work from home, the home office. We try to combine everything. We try to relax and work at the same time. We do home and work in the same building. And that's why we also get mentally disturbed sometimes, because it all gets too much for us. So I took a great lesson out of Cosimo's life, that he actually had a physical location, that he left the city of Florence, went to his Villa di Carreggi, got up early in the morning to walk through his garden and nurture the nature and take something out of that. And so my question now oftentimes is, what are you doing? How are you doing that? Because as much as we like to function as machines, we're not. We're human beings, and human beings need space to recuperate, to get some fresh air into our brains, and the question is, where do we do that?
Well, it's especially important when we realize that life is not, and your business life is not just what you're going to do next year, but what are you going to do the next 10 years, the next 20 years, the next 30 years. And if you kind of really burn out in the meantime, it's not gonna be a life of significance and legacy. And I remember early on, I was really convicted. Really, that's the right word. In my beginning 20s, I was working non-stop, and I enjoyed it. I mean, it was really stuff.
Well,
that-
we are workaholics in
Yeah,
a sense,
yeah.
Philip. I mean, you and I, if people look at us from the outside, they've always said, we're not the lazy bum people that just hang out at the beach. We've always been extremely busy.
Yeah, and so for us, this Jewish Christian idea of the Sabbath, of actually working 6 days a week and taking 1 day off, no internet, no communication, really to recover, to let your soul breathe. To take care of what is needed in order then to give it all. Beginning of my 20s, actually, this was a cornerstone of what I would say what made me stay healthy through the ups and downs of just an entrepreneurial life.
Yeah, and that's actually where you are very religious about your Sabbath. I know that.
The only thing I'm really
very
religious about.
Yeah, I know that.
Yeah. So for the last 10 years, for the last 20 years, I always took 1 day off. Then I now have a family with small kids, so I said, okay, I will start to take the weekend off here once in a while. And realize that, hey, now I'm more exhausted after the weekend.
That's true.
So I need a new strategy in watering my garden with small kids.
Yeah, but it all comes back to that there are things we need to do in order to take care of ourselves. And I call it, that's why I call this the house of personal development. There are things we need to do in order to develop ourselves. Another chapter is on the whole theme of reading books, is intellectual stimulation. What kind of new information are we processing? There's the debating ideas, but then there's also this kind of, looking for places for us to kind of piece ourselves back together.
That's why we also feel like it's not like you get this done once and everything is good. There are different circles, different times, rhythms in your life, different phases where you just need also different strategies and tactics. Basically to accomplish the same goal. So get your house in order. The first house is the house of personal development.
Yeah, you need to get it yourself in order first, and before you want to accomplish great things in life. So in a sense, that's
you can get the book at medicibook.com, and if you haven't subscribed to the podcast, please do, and we'll continue with the next house, the house of personal relationships, in the next episode.